Kai adjusted the controls of his small scout ship, the hum of the engine filling the cockpit as the starfield stretched endlessly ahead. He had been on routine patrol along the edge of explored space, scanning for anomalies, when a faint distress signal flickered on his console. The signal was weak, distorted, and unlike any pattern he had seen before. It pulsed rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat. The coordinates pointed to an uncharted planet far beyond the usual trade routes. His heart quickened. Something or someone was in trouble, and he couldn't ignore it. As he entered the planet's orbit, the surface revealed itself in flashes of storm and shadow. Jagged mountain peaks cut through thick violet clouds, and glowing rivers of strange energy snaked across the terrain. The atmosphere was unstable, shimmering with turbulence, and lightning arced across the sky in erratic bursts. Kai tightened his grip on the controls, navigating carefully through the rough atmosphere. He had faced dangerous planets before, but there was something about this place, a silent threat hidden beneath the storm, made the hairs on his neck stand up. The distress signal grew stronger as he descended. He landed on a rocky plateau, engines whining against the wind, dust and glowing mist swirling around him. The air was thin and crackling with static energy, and every shadow seemed to move, as if the planet itself was alive and watching him. Kai climbed down from his ship, scanning the area with a handheld sensor. The signal came from just beyond a jagged ridge, a canyon veiled in violet mist. He could see faint tracks, small, uneven imprints in the rocky ground leading toward the signal source. Someone had been here recently, moving with urgency. Suddenly, movement caught his eye. A figure crouched behind a boulder, trembling violently, her small frame barely visible in the mist. Kai froze, lowering his weapon slowly. The girl was unlike any species he had encountered, tall enough to pass for human, yet her skin shimmered faintly, almost translucent, and her violet eyes reflected fear and exhaustion. She stared at him, every muscle tense, as if expecting attack, betrayal, or worse. Her body shook, and when she whispered, her voice barely audible over the wind, it carried both terror and desperation. I'm ready," she said, leaning slightly forward, trembling all the while. "But for what, I don't know." Her words hung in the air, strange and cryptic, but Kai felt the weight behind them. It wasn't defiance or challenge it was a fragile plea, a cautious declaration that she needed help but was afraid of what came next. And he stepped closer, careful not to frighten her further, and raised his hands slowly, showing he meant no harm. "I heard your signal," he said softly. "I'm here to help. You don't have to face this alone." The girl flinched violently at his voice, her hands pressing to her chest, trembling more fiercely. She had clearly been trained to fear, to hide, to survive through caution and instinct. Kai could see the pain etched into her posture. The constant tension in her limbs, the way her body reacted to his presence as though every movement might bring danger. Yet, despite the fear, there was also something else: his curiosity, faint hope glimmering in her violet eyes. He lowered himself to her level, careful to avoid looming over her. "I don't even know what they are, but I know you're not safe here alone." She glanced at him, her trembling lessening slightly, but her eyes darted toward the jagged ridges beyond, toward unseen threats that Kai couldn't yet identify. Her instincts were sharp. She knew the dangers of this place far better than he did. The stormy terrain, the pulsing energy streams, and the strange atmospheric distortions all seemed part of the danger. How she had learned to navigate from birth. Kai held out a hand cautiously. "Trust me, just for a moment. I'll protect you. Can you do that?" The girl's trembling intensified, but she did not step back. She seemed to weigh her options, measuring his words against a lifetime of fear and isolation. Finally, she nodded ever so slightly, a small gesture of surrender to trust. She moved closer, still trembling, leaning in as if preparing for something she could not yet name. Above them, a storm raged, lightning casting fleeting shadows across the jagged rocks. The wind howled through the canyon, carrying the faint hum of energy from unseen sources. The girl's trembling became the rhythm of the planet itself, a mixture of fear, instinct, and tentative courage. And Kai knew that whatever awaited them beyond the ridge, the first step had been taken. She had chosen to reach for help. fragile and unsteady though it was, and he would not let her face the unknown alone. The alien girl clung close to Kai as they moved cautiously through the jagged canyon, her trembling still pronounced but now accompanied by a strange determination. Every step forward was calculated, each movement careful, because the planet itself seemed alive, reacting to their presence. The wind howled violently through narrow rock formations, and distant flashes of lightning revealed strange glowing patterns on the canyon walls. Shadows shifted with every pulse of energy, and Kai could sense eyes watching them, though he could see nothing clearly. The hunt had begun, even if he didn't yet know who or what was after them. He led her along a narrow ridge that overlooked a glowing river of energy, was careful to keep them both hidden behind jagged rocks and alien flora. Her trembling intensified whenever the wind gusted sharply or a shadow moved too quickly. "They're close," she whispered, her voice breaking with fear. "The hunters, they never stop." Kai didn't respond immediately. Instead, he scanned the area, trying to identify the source of the threat. The faint hum of machinery, or perhaps something biological, echoed through the canyon, rising and falling like a predator stalking prey. He realized this planet's inhabitants, or at least those pursuing her, were relentless and highly trained. As they moved, the girl's trembling shifted subtly. It was no longer pure fear, it was anticipation, an instinctive awareness that helped them avoid traps or unstable ground. She pointed silently toward faint disturbances in the glowing soil pressure, marks that suggested something large had passed moments ago. Kai nodded, impressed despite the urgency.
"Oh, you've been here before," he said quietly.
Her trembling now had a rhythm, a guide that told him more than words could convey. Suddenly, the hum grew louder, and a mechanical screech cut through the air. A patrol emerged from the Mista sleek, armored figure with glowing sensors scanning the terrain. The girl froze completely, her body rigid with terror, trembling violently. Kai instinctively crouched, pulling her down behind a jagged rock. The patrol's sensors swept over the ridge, missing their hiding spot by inches. The girl's hands gripped his arm, trembling with relief and residual fear. "They're fast," she whispered, her voice trembling but also tinged with awe. Kai gave her a small nod, then whispered instructions. "We move when the next flash passes. Follow my lead exactly," she nodded, biting her lip, and they waited, the storm around them crackling with energy. When the moment came, they darted forward, using shadows and terrain to stay out of sight. The girl's trembling slowed just enough for her to step lightly, mirroring his movements. It was a delicate dance. Every step could trigger detection, but every movement also strengthened the fragile trust growing between them. Hours passed as they weaved through the canyon, narrowly avoiding patrols and environmental hazards. Lightning illuminated jagged cliffs and glowing streams, revealing sudden drops or unstable ground. The girl stumbled occasionally, trembling heavily, and Kai steadied her without a word, allowing his presence to anchor her. Her trust was growing. Slowly, yet every flash of light or sudden noise reminded her of the dangers she faced. The trembling was no longer just fear, it was a mixture of instinct, cautious courage, and tentative hope. Finally, they crested a ridge and saw a narrow passage, leading to a hidden valley. In the distance, faint structures glimmered under the stormlit sky, perhaps shelters, or a way off this planet. But the patrols were closing in, and the hum of machinery grew louder, more insistent. The girl trembled harder than ever, her eyes darting to every shadow, every movement. Kai knelt beside her, placing a reassuring hand near hers. "Stay close. Almost there. You've been incredible." She nodded slightly, trembling but resolute, ready to follow him into the unknown. The storm raged around them, the valley below offering both hope and danger. Every second counted, and every tremble, every fearful glance now carried weight. They were being hunted, yet moving together, a silent understanding forming between them. Kai knew the next steps would be the hardest, but for the first time, the girl had chosen trust over Ferran. That choice might just save both their lives. Kai and the alien girl paused in the shadow of a jagged cliff. The storm raging above them, winds tearing at their clothes, and the sharp scent of ionized air filling their lungs. The valley ahead seemed safe for a moment, a small pocket between towering cliffs where the lightning could not reach. She sank to the ground, trembling heavily, and Kai crouched beside her, offering silent reassurance. He could see the exhaustion in her eyes, the weight of fear she carried like a physical burden. For a moment, the world around them fell away, leaving only the two of them in the storm. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely audible over the wind. "My people. They fear humans," she said, trembling as she forced the words out. "They think you are unstoppable, cruel. I've never seen one before, and yet I—" The voice faltered, and she buried her face in her hands, trembling more fiercely. Kai placed a hand gently near hers, careful not to touch, letting her know he was listening, letting her take the first steps toward trust. "It's okay," he said softly. "I'm not here to hurt you. You're safe with me." She looked up, eyes wide, and for a brief moment, the storm seemed to soften around them, though the danger had not passed. She told him fragments of her story. Her people were hidden, scattered across the stars, hunted for their knowledge and abilities. She had been captured once and escaped, but the hunters were relentless, following every signal, every step. Her trembling grew as she recounted the memory, a mixture of fear and trauma. Each word a spark against the fragile trust forming between them. Kai listened, absorbing every detail, understanding that her fear was more than instinctive, was survival honed over years of oppression and danger. "The hunters, they will not forgive," she whispered, trembling violently. "Anyone who helps me, anyone who shows compassion, is a target." Kai's jaw tightened. He had faced danger before, but this was different. This was a young life, fragile and trembling, placed entirely in his hands. He realized that survival alone was not enough. He had to anticipate, protect, and guide her through a world that had never been forgiving. Every trembling movement, every fearful glance was now a guide, a signal that helped him navigate both her emotions and the perilous terrain. As they moved deeper into the hidden valley, Kai noticed subtle changes. Her trembling lessened slightly, replaced with tension and alertness. She was beginning to rely on him, to trust his instincts, and even to anticipate his actions. When he pointed out dangers ahead, a fissure in the glowing rock, pressure plate in the alien soil, she listened intently, her violet eyes wide, trembling now with concentration rather than fear. The bond between them grew with each careful step, forged in danger and uncertainty. Suddenly, movement flickered in the distance, hunters, emerging from the storm as silent, deadly silhouettes. The girl froze, trembling violently again, and Kai instinctively shielded her behind a crystalline outcrop. Her eyes darted around, calculating escape routes, her trembling now mingled with cautious strategy. He whispered instructions, guiding her through the shadows, their movements synchronized like a single unit. Every heartbeat, every breath was a delicate balance of fear, trust, and unspoken communication. Hours passed in tense silence as they navigated the valley. The girl's trembling shifted with the environment, small quivers signaling caution, bursts of shaking signaling alertness or danger. She began to communicate without words, subtle shifts in posture and gestures guiding Kai's decisions. He realized that her fear had transformed into a form of intelligence, a living map of danger and opportunity that only he could interpret if he paid close attention. The trembling had become a language, and he was learning to read it at last. They reached a narrow passage leading toward what seemed like a hidden platform, a possible escape point from the valley. The hunters were still out there, but for the first time, the girl's trembling carried more determination than panic. She glanced at Kai, her eyes reflecting stormlight and hope, and whispered, "I trust you. Guide me." He nodded, heart pounding. Together, trembling and cautious, they advanced toward the next step in their escape. The secret of her story, now fully shared, binding them closer than ever in the silent trust of survival. The narrow passage twisted, sharply between towering crystal formations that hummed faintly with alien energy. Kai led the way, every step deliberate, every movement silent. The girl followed close, trembling with tension. But her violet eyes were sharper now, scanning for danger, learning to anticipate threats the way he did. The storm outside had lessened. Slightly, but the alien air still crackled with electricity, and distant echoes of movement reminded them that the hunters were never far behind. Each sound, each flicker of shadow could signal the approach of deadly enemies. They had just passed a glowing fissure in the rocky ground when the first ambush struck. A low hum vibrated through the ground and shadows materialized along the walls, sleek, armored figures, weapons glowing with blue energy. The girl froze instantly, her body trembling violently. Kai grabbed her hand, pulling her down behind a jagged outcrop. The hunters advanced, scanning with precision.
S!
Every second stretched as if time itself had slowed, the threat pressing against them like the heavy wind of the storm. Kai whispered, "Stay calm. Follow me. We'll get through this." The first hunter swept past their hiding spot, its sensors missing them by inches. The girl's trembling shifted from fear to controlled tension, a rhythm he learned to read. A quiver for fear, a pause for listening, a subtle twitch indicating danger ahead. Using the signals, Kai led her along a narrow ledge, stepping carefully to avoid detection. The hunters were relentless, moving with mechanical precision. But Kai's calm and the girl's trembling, guided instincts allowed them to slip through shadows and gaps, avoiding confrontation. Suddenly, a patrol moved into their path, directly in the narrow corridor. The girl's trembling intensified, her breath quickening, but Kai held her hand, guiding her behind a crystalline pillar. The hunter paused, sensors glowing, its attention fixed on the wrong side of the corridor. They remained perfectly still, hearts pounding, and finally the hunter moved on. The girl exhaled, trembling slightly less, but her eyes still flicked nervously toward every movement.
Ow.
"They're everywhere," she whispered. I can't stop shaking." Kai nodded, understanding that the trembling was not weakness, it was awareness. A language of survival that had kept her alive this long. They moved forward again. Weaving between jagged crystal formations and glowing energy streams, the ambushes came in, bursts patrols, emerging from the mist, mechanical screeches echoing across the cavern. The girl's trembling now had purpose, guiding Kai through hidden traps, fissures, and unstable platforms. Her instinctive movements and subtle shifts told him where to step, where danger lurked, and when to pause. For the first time, trembling had become a tool, a silent communication of fear turned into survival skill. As they reached a broader section of the cavern, the hunters converged, forming a blocking line ahead. The girl's trembling intensified, but she glanced at Kai and nodded, a silent signal that she trusted him to lead. Kai's mind raced. He had no weapons that could match the patrols directly, no backup anywhere nearby. The only way through was clever strategy, using the terrain, the crystals, and the hunter's own focus against them. He whispered instructions, guiding the girl to move in sync, slipping between shadows, dodging energy beams. Every tremble of her body signaling his next move. Finally, after tense moments that stretched like hours, they slipped past the last line of hunters. The girl collapsed against the side of a crystal wall, trembling with exhaustion, but alive. Kai knelt beside her, offering a steady hand and a reassuring smile. "We made it," he said softly. "But we're not safe yet. Keep moving. Just a little more." Her trembling lessened slightly, now mingled with determination. They had survived the ambush, but the storm of danger still raged around them. Yet, through fear, trust, and careful instinct, they had taken another step toward freedom above them. The cavern's energy pulsed faintly, casting shadows that danced like distant specters. The girl exhaled, trembling softly, but her violet eyes reflected a spark Kai hadn't seen before, a mix of courage, relief, and tentative hope. The ambush had tested them, but it had also strengthened the fragile bond that now connected them. Together, trembling yet resolute, they advanced toward the escape point. Each step bringing them closer to safety and a future they could hardly imagine. The hidden valley stretched ahead, patchwork of glowing crystal formations and jagged rock, illuminated by the fading storm above. Kai led the way, moving swiftly but cautiously, every step measured. The alien girl followed, trembling with each movement, yet her steps were steadier than before. Her violet eyes darted constantly, scanning for danger, reflecting both fear and growing trust. The valley seemed deceptively quiet, but the faint hum of distant machinery reminded them that the hunters were still out there, relentless and patient. Every heartbeat mattered, every breath could betray their presence. They reached a narrow ridge, overlooking a crystalline plateau, their potential escape point. The shuttle's faint silhouette glimmered in the distance, nestled between energy streams that flickered like rivers of light. But the patrols had anticipated their route. Armored hunters moved with precision across the plateau, sensors sweeping methodically, hunting for the girl. She froze, trembling violently, her hands gripping Kai's arm. "We can't! They'll see us!" she whispered, her voice breaking under fear and exhaustion. Kai nodded, understanding that the trembling now was more than fear, it was instinct. Guiding them through danger with every quiver of her body, Kai crouched beside her, whispering instructions. "We wait for the storm's next flash. When the lightning arcs, we move together, slow, silent, precise." The girl nodded, trembling, but she did not pull back. She had begun to trust him completely, placing her life in his hands even as her body betrayed every ounce of anxiety she felt. When the next flash illuminated the plateau, they darted forward, using shadows and the brief cover of energy streams to mask their movements. The hunter's sensors flickered with every pulse, but the duo moved like ghosts through the crystal-lit landscape. One hunter detected a shadow, its glowing eyes scanning toward them. The girl froze, trembling violently, and Kai pressed her too. The ground behind a jagged crystal? The hunter's gaze passed over them by mere inches. Her trembling slowed, and she exhaled quietly, trusting him to guide the next move. Kai signaled her forward, and together they slipped between the formations, the shuttle now just a few hundred meters away. Every step felt precarious, the crystal ground unstable, but the trembling of the girl now served as a rhythm, alerting him to danger. Guiding their path with subtle shifts in posture and instinctive hesitation, they reached the shuttle, its hull flickering with soft energy pulses. Girl's trembling intensified, not from fear alone, but from adrenaline, anticipation, and hope. Kai keyed the controls, opening the hatch, and whispered, "Almost there. Just a few steps." She hesitated for a moment, eyes scanning the plateau, then nodded and moved toward him. Hunters appeared suddenly at the edge of the plateau, rushing in coordinated lines. Kai pulled the girl inside the shuttle just as energy beams scorched the air around them. She collapsed inside, trembling uncontrollably, but alive. Kai engaged the shuttle's engines, the hum of machinery rising as the craft lifted off the plateau. Through the viewport, the hunters were still advancing, their weapons aimed, but the shuttle's speed and trajectory carried them out of immediate danger. The girl's trembling slowed gradually, her violet eyes fixed on him, a mixture of awe, gratitude, and tentative relief. She had survived through fear, instinct, and trust, and now, in the safety of the shuttle, her trembling became a fragile symbol of hope. As they soared above the storm-torn planet, Kai glanced at her. "You did incredible back there, trembling or not. You kept us alive." She looked at him, trembling lightly still, and whispered, I've never had anyone stay with me before. Not like this." His heart tightened at her words. Dot. Trembling, once a language of fear, had now become a silent testament to trust and connection. She leaned slightly closer, trembling gently, and Kai realized that their bond had deepened far beyond survival. It was the fragile beginning of understanding, loyalty, and unspoken companionship. The stars stretched endlessly beyond the shuttles. Viewport, the storm fading beneath them, leaving only the quiet pulse of distant galaxies. The girl exhaled, trembling softly, but the fear had shifted. It was now tempered by relief and trust. Kai adjusted their course, eyes on the stars ahead, knowing that this escape was only the first step in a journey neither of them had fully understood. Together, trembling and resilient, they would face the unknown, stronger, wiser, and bound by a connection forged in danger and trust. The shuttle drifted through the dark expanse above the storm-torn planet, engines humming steadily. As Kai guided them toward safety, the alien girl sat across from him, trembling softly, her violet eyes reflecting both exhaustion and awe. The events of the chase, the ambush, and the escape weighed heavily on her, yet something had shifted in her demeanor. Had once been, fear was now a mixture of relief, curiosity, and a strange, unspoken emotion that Kai couldn't yet name. The bond between them had deepened, forged in survival, trust, and shared danger. She leaned closer, her small hands brushing against the console as though seeking support. I never imagined someone would come for me, she whispered, trembling, but with a subtle firmness now. Not like this. Not a human. Kai glanced at her, noting the flicker of vulnerability hidden beneath her resilience. I'm here because I chose to be, he said simply. No one else matters right now, only getting you safe. Intensified slightly, but it was no longer fear. It was anticipation. A reaction to something she couldn't yet articulate. Then she did something Kai did not expect. She reached out, her trembling hand brushing against his arm, a simple touch, loaded with meaning. I want to stand by you, she said, her voice trembling yet steady. I don't fully understand it, but I'm ready. The words hung in the air, heavy with emotion. Kai realized that the trembling, the fear, the instinct that had guided them through every peril, was transforming into trust and an unthinkable response, an offering of herself, her allegiance, and her respect to him. In her culture, such gestures were rare, sacred, and incredibly significant. Kai didn't move immediately, simply allowed her trembling hand to remain near his, feeling the energy of the moment. The alien's eyes were wide, searching his face for a reaction, for confirmation that her trust was not misplaced. The shuttle glided silently past glowing nebulae, stars stretching like rivers of light across the void, and in that suspended quiet, the significance of her gesture became clear. Trembling had shifted from fear to courage, from vulnerability to a declaration of loyalty and bond. He had earned her trust not through words alone, but through action, presence, and a willingness to face danger alongside her. Accept, Kai said finally, his voice soft but firm. We face what comes together. Girl's trembling eased slightly, replaced by a faint but steady determination. She allowed herself to lean closer, not in fear, but in solidarity, as if pledging silently that she would endure, fight, and survive with him. The unthinkable response, the trembling, transformed into trust. Attachment and a readiness to stand together filled the shuttle with a quiet intensity, a bond that words could only partially capture. Outside, the planet receded, storms fading, beneath the shuttle's course, leaving only the vastness of space. Inside, the girl's trembling slowed further, now a rhythmic signal of hope and connection. Kai kept his eyes on the navigation, but his awareness never left her. Every tremor, every subtle movement had become a language between them, a silent conversation of trust and shared experience. He realized that this bond, born in fear and danger, had evolved into something neither had anticipated, but both felt deeply as the shuttle approached the edge of known space. The girl spoke again, her voice steady but trembling slightly with emotion. I've never had anyone stay. Not truly. Not like you. Kai smiled faintly, a quiet warmth in his chest. Now you do. And we'll face everything together from here on. Neither of us is alone. She nodded, her trembling finally softening into a steady presence beside him. For the first time since the planet's storm, she seemed calm, yet the unspoken intensity of her gesture, the unthinkable response hung in the air, marking a new beginning. The stars stretched endlessly before them, glittering like distant promises. Trembling, trust, and courage had guided them through every danger. And now they soared toward an uncertain future, united by the bond forged in peril, strengthened by shared survival, and sealed by an unthinkable response neither could have predicted. Together, human and alien, trembling yet resolute, They moved into the unknown, ready for whatever challenges awaited in the vast, star-strewn expanse of space.